Welcome everyone to another Spot On Chat. My name is Rebecca Monet. I'm with Zorakle Profiles. We provide profiling tools to franchisors and franchise consultants that help facilitate a right fit between a franchisee and a franchise system. Today, my guest is Stan Friedman. I'm so glad you're here. I know no one other than Stan who's more knowledgeable or more passionate about franchising. Many of you know Stan as president of FRM Solutions. What you may not know is that Stan serves on the IFA Educational Foundation's Leadership Council and the IFA Supplier Board. Stan is a founding member of the IFA Diversity Institute, and he co-created the Professional Athlete Franchise Initiative with NFL veteran Michael Stone. Stan is a board member of the Southeast Franchise Forum and an advisory board member with the Titus Center for Franchising. And he still finds time to produce and host Franchise Today, a weekly podcast dedicated to franchising, where he interviews leading franchise executives and serves an audience of franchisors and franchise professionals. So Stan, I'm so glad you are here. I have to tell you, having listened to your show for so many years and calling you friend for so many years, I have to tell you, this was actually intimidating to invite you on. I'm like, am I going to do this right? You know, Stan knows what he's doing. I don't have a clue what I'm doing.
Listen, you're doing it the gutsy way. You're doing it live. You know, I used to do my podcast live too, and then I started hearing the difference between how it sounded produced versus just the live conversation. So you're the one with the guts. Now I'm being intimidated because we are doing it live.
And this is a lot of why I love you, Stan, and so many folks within franchising love you. You always bring out the best in people. You see who those people are and bring them to their highest potential. When I met you, I think it's like 11 years ago, probably 2009, when
right.
Mark Franklin patched me in on a call with you. You were in a car going to some kind of franchise event like you always are. And Mark Franklin says to me, "You got to meet Stan Friedman." And it's changed my life. I got to tell you, having you as a friend, having you as a mentor, having you advise me and coach me in my business has made such a huge difference. I want to thank you.
Oh, it hasn't come without some reciprocity. So you've been a good friend here too, and I appreciate and respect and value the relationship as much as you do, Rebecca.
Oh, I hope so. I don't know how I could ever give back what you've given to me and so many others in the franchise space. So I was a little confused. You serve as on the board of trustees, and you serve on the leadership council with the Educational Foundation at the IFA. What exactly is the difference?
The Educational Foundation's Board of Trustees is the governing body that oversees programs like the CFE, Next Gen, Diversity Fran, Vet Fran, and the programs that are administered by those initiatives are all overseen by the Board of Trustees for the Educational Foundation. That's a seat that I was just elected to at the last convention, and I'll serve for 2 years in that role. The Leadership Council is an esteemed group of IFA leadership from the dynasties of Sid Feltenstein, Doc Cohn, Mike Isaacson. These are guys that have sat in the major seats on the major big boy board of IFA, and they are the fundraisers who help to shake big numbers from people who got the ability to contribute to make donations to the IFA's Educational Foundation. And I got asked to take a seat on that board where you talk about feeling intimidated. I'm around some of the most iconic. Gordon Logan is on that board. Joe Kirshner.
Oh my.
No, Joe's on the trustee board. I take that back. But the leadership board is a lot. The leadership council is a lot of people that have been around the business for an awfully long time. They're all benevolent people, and some give of their time and their money, and some of us that don't have that kind of money just give more of our time, but we help find the money in
Mhm.
places where we've got relationships and where we can help others see the value proposition of their contributions to the IFA's educational foundation, helping to encourage programs like VetFran and NextGen, and to look ahead to building legacy ahead, having the tools, the money, the resources to create the initiatives and to continue to feed them and to staff the people that have to run the programs. It's the leadership council that kind of pushes in and does that heavy lifting.
Wow, a lot of responsibility. And like you said, these are benevolent people. These are folks with incredible amount of experience that they're bringing to the table, all for a bigger cause, a bigger
Right.
purpose, right? To enhance franchising, to educate the next generations, to empower those that are involved in franchising or considering franchising. So this attitude that you have had of empowering, contributing, edifying others also kind of spreads into a diversity side of you. You were talking diversity long before it was a popular term, and that it's important for us to get involved in various areas. Can you speak a little bit more to that? Maybe even going all the way back to your Blimpie days, and how you brought diversity to the forefront and innovated using that.
Well, that's where it all started. When I was hired by Blimpie back in the 90s, I was told by one of the leaders of the Blimpie organization, one of the four horsemen that were the executives that run the company, that I was going to have to agree to my obligatory 40 hours a week doing my job. Minimum 40 hours a week was the way it was couched. And that I would also have to agree to a minimum of 40 hours a month in service to the IFA. So this gentleman is no longer with us. His name is Chuck. His name was Chuck Linus. And Chuck was one of the executives at Blimpie, who at the time was also the president of the New York State Restaurant Association, and he was on the IFA board.
Hmm.
And so talk about heavy lifting. Chuck was one of those guys who got the heavy lifting done through his own executive team. So everybody who was an executive on the Blimpie team had to pledge 40 hours a month doing something for IFA, which enabled Chuck to be a proud member of the leadership in IFA, and Blimpie always looking like the great stewards that we were, very IFA active. Chuck insisted that I get involved with what was then called Minorities in Franchising. The diversity board was not yet born. And I spent 8 or so years in service on the Minorities in Franchising Committee before it became the diversity board. And when we morphed into the diversity board to foster and include more than just minorities alone, but other avenues that also encompass diversity. We changed the name to the Diversity Institute. I became a founding member, and I've been on that board since '07 and continued to do service there as well. And my dog is saying hello, and I don't know if everybody can hear him or not.
Hey, Jack.
Jack says hi. He's 3 closed doors, and 1 flight of stairs away, and I still hear him. So if I hear him, you do too. So yeah, the work in diversity was something that was kind of strange to me at first, but man, I've made friends over the years that I've never have been exposed to, and those friendships have morphed into personal relationships that have gone a lot deeper than just the work, doing the work, and the heavy lift in diversity. It took me and Tony Konza to the White House, my founder and CEO at Blimpie. We spent a day at the White House Conference for Community Empowerment back in the summer of '08. And literally that was an experience in and of itself. Just, I wasn't real happy with Bill Clinton and Al Gore as my president and vice president, but the power of the presidency and being at the White House and being around and seeing those things up close and personal was an amazing experience. Totally amazing experience.
I cannot even imagine. But again, this is showing you and Blimpies were on the forefront of this idea of diversity, I mean, I don't recall those terms in the early 90s. That was new at that time. And now look what it's turned into, these incredible connections and relationships and successful businesses and individuals coming out of that initiative, and it continues to grow.
Rebecca, for me, I'm not a member of a diverse community per se. So the way I've always approached the work in diversity has been through saying to people, I don't have any control over your moral compass. I have no control over your political or social compass. So I'm not speaking to you about diversity from any of those perspectives. But I do know this, that people like doing business with people that look like them, that represent them. And if you're not bringing people into your franchise system to serve communities of people who they see their storekeepers and the owners of those businesses or the operators of those businesses reflecting who they are, then they're going to find some place to shop that does that for them instead of you having that opportunity. And so I've always proffered that it's the business case for diversity that I've always laid claim to. And I've told franchisors, ad nauseum over the years that, diversity is a business issue as much as it is any of the others, moral, political, or social. And if you don't lay claim to the opportunities that are available to you in diverse communities, then your competition will. And for that reason alone, you should be towing into these waters. And then along the way, the things that happened to me years ago are going to happen to you. You're going to start building friendships, relationships, and you're going to start finding that there's a whole channel in your life that you're not exposing yourself to, that you should have, and you're going to feel like, oh my God, have I wasted time? Not even being aware that there was a part of me that I should have been aware of, and a community that I should have been leaning into. And I'm only finding out about it now because somebody pounded me over the head to do it.
Wow. I like how you described it, that it is a business issue, a financial decision, but ultimately it's more than that. So even if a franchisor or a business owner chooses to learn more about diversity and aligns with people different than themselves politically, financially, in any other way, ethnically, this is going to open up a whole nother world that we haven't seen. And this is a part that I've always seen in you. You always bring it back to business, but when I observe you and the way you work with people, it always comes from what I call a moral compass, or a due north. And your due north is, I mean, so straight, it's almost unbelievable, especially when you think of people that can sway one direction or another in business. But for you, it's always about doing what's right. Yes, it's a business decision. Yes, you're going to make more money as a franchisor if you open up, or as an individual, if you open up to these the diverse thoughts, or diverse people, or diverse groups. But ultimately, it's for you. It's about doing what's right and what's best, always, always.
Rebecca, I've had the good fortune. Sometimes we learn what to do by being around people perhaps that don't do things as well or the way they ought to be done. And yet you're in a position where you've got a job, and you've got a job to do, and you're working for people that sometimes you think can do things differently or better. So sometimes you learn what to do best by the things that are being done less than best. Right. You and I have, in our history, had the, I think of it as the good fortune. I didn't think of it that way then. But I learned what not to do, a lot of what not to do, by working for the same company that you did in my early franchise days. It was a real estate franchise company. It doesn't exist anymore, so I can say the name, HFS, then became Sendent, and then morphed into other things. But you want to talk about a company that didn't have a very strong culture. It didn't have a culture that even cared much about the people who worked for them. And, you know, when you can look at a company that doesn't take care of the people who work for them, what chance do you have as a franchisee in a company like that, where you're 1,000 miles away, needing to be dependent on people who don't really care about their own people, much less you? All right, so that's how I felt working there. It became an imperative to me that I not be around cultures like that in franchising. There's still companies out there that, you know, that have their eye focused sometimes on the wrong ball. They're looking at the initial franchise fee. They're not looking at the recurring revenue streams. And it's just grabbing checks or doing things to get the next deal done. You learn a lot about what not to do sometimes to help you set your compass to true north and continue to know that there are better ways to do things than others have done them, and that you'd rather be the person that does well by doing good instead of just doing what you have to do because you're just collecting a paycheck just like they're collecting checks. You're in the wrong place too if you're working someplace like that.
Right. You know, it reminds me of a story I heard you tell at the A to Z of buying a franchise, the classes you used to do. And it was a story about a gentleman who wanted to buy, was it a regional territory? Remember, can you tell that story? Because that's an example of, again, doing what is good and right for one person, even though it potentially affected your livelihood, your commissions, or whatever.
I remember
So
exactly what you're talking
can
about.
you, okay.
That was in my wing zone days, and I had been pretty far down the road with a candidate for a franchise down in Florida who had all of the stuff that you'd want in a candidate for a franchise like Wing Zone at the time. We were a small box, you know, small store, 1,200 square feet. We had like 80 or 90 items in inventory. And this guy was the general manager of a very well-known supermarket chain. And literally in his sleep, he'd be the best franchisee ever for me. Manage people, manage SKUs, manage things in inventory, leadership, everything. I mean, he was just perfect. Well, pretty far down the road, we were almost done with the deal. We were ready to get to yes. And I discovered that he was a single dad who had 2 young kids. He'd lost his wife to cancer 2 years or 3 years earlier. And literally, I put the brakes on the deal with him and said, "We're not doing this." And he said, "What do you mean we're not doing this?" And I said, "We can't do a deal like this with my business is a business that demands you in the store at night, and you in the store on weekends, you in the store on holidays. And you're going to have 2 young kids. Daddy, let's go to the zoo. Daddy, let's play baseball. Daddy, let's go here. Daddy, I need help with homework." And I don't want to compete with that. And I know full well that the key to your front door is going to become the heaviest thing you've ever tried to lift in your life soon after the new car smell wears off on the deal that we've done if we do this franchise. I'm not doing it. And he was livid. He threatened me. He was going to sue me.
Oh my.
All the time that he spent doing due diligence and literally lost opportunity. He was just all over me, screaming everything you can imagine at me. And then he calls me about 2 weeks later and asks me if I'm in town. And I said, "Yeah." "Do I need to worry about something? You coming for me or what?"
Am I being served? What's going on?
He basically told me he wanted to take me and my wife to the best dinner we'd ever eaten in our lives and thank me for helping save him from himself. And he couldn't believe that he almost considered a decision that left out a whole chapter of what his life was going to demand had he been given that franchise, and I saved him from a stupid mistake. He was mad at himself more than he was mad at me after he realized that I shouldn't be the guy he's mad at all. I saw that, and I knew from, again, past experience, you're not going to be committed to I'm going to lose. When you put me up against your kids, I lose. And why go to the trouble and try to unravel it after we've signed documents for 10 or 15 or 20 years? Let's just call it a day now, and you're not happy with me right now, but at the end of the day, you're going to be a whole lot happier with yourself. And that's exactly how it played out. And I felt
Wow.
really good. Now I wanted that deal.
Of course.
In places in my past, you know, that deal would have happened. I would have been working for somebody who would have not given a flip about that's not my problem. It's not your problem. The problem is we need this many deals this month, and boom, boom, boom. There it is. It's right there. Take it. And, you know, in days gone by, that might have happened that way, but not anymore.
No, no. And that's that integrity. That's that due north. And it reminds me of a personal story I have with you. I hope you don't mind me sharing.
I'll let you know.
All right. We can always cut this out of the video if we have to, right? So I promoted a luncheon. It was an appreciation luncheon for my clients at an event in New York City. And it was during the Franchise Expo. And I remember and it was just a handful of people, and I co-sponsored it with 2 other companies. And it went well. We taught them a little stuff. And then I flew back home, and I got a call from Stan Friedman. And Stan, you laid into me and you said, this was not a right thing to do. You pulled people away from a franchise expo during a lunchtime when they should have been on the floor. MFE, IFA, all these other companies have invested a lot of time and energy in pulling people together, and you're taking a number of them off site to a luncheon. And I remember bursting out in tears thinking, oh my goodness, I did a horrible, horrible thing and didn't even know it, right? I didn't even know that I had done it. But again, that was that doing the right thing where you called me, a friend, on the carpet and said, Rebecca, that was wrong. That was wrong. You cannot do that. That affects the livelihood of others. And so I picked up the phone and I called Tom Portese, and I'm like, Tom, can you ever forgive me? I wasn't thinking. I don't know where I was. I didn't put the dots together. But I so appreciated that critique, that showing of doing what's right and best for all concerned, and your fearlessness and giving honest feedback when you see, in this case, me and my business or a franchise or someone else saying, you know what, that's a little off center. That's going to have some negative consequences, both professionally and in terms of your credibility and your integrity. So I appreciate that feedback. And I know you do the same for others that you're coaching, you're mentoring, you're stepping up to. And I know I have appreciated it. It's made a big difference for me.
Thank you for reminding me of that. And I hope I wasn't too hard on you.
You had me crying. It was terrible. So thanks for being here, Stan. We'll catch up with you on our next Spot On Chat, okay?
You bet.